So, I'm gonna level with you here. I don't play simulation games very often, and I'm by no means an expert on railway economics. Now, I'm gonna cover A-Train to the best of my ability, but if you want a more informed look at the series, I recommend checking out this review of A-Train 3 from Lazy Game Reviews. You should also read issue 9 of Ray Barnholt's magazine Scroll, which is pretty much the definitive English language resource for all things Artdink. There's a link in the description for this video. With that out of the way, we're actually covering 3 games in this episode. First up here is A.IV Evolution, A-Ressha de Ikou 4, a launch title for the PlayStation in Japan. An expanded version, A.IV Evolution Global, debuted 1 year later, also in Japan. A.IV Evolution Global was the basis for a North American release in 1996, which was simply titled A-Train. For the sake of this episode, we're focusing on the North American version of A-Train. There's subtle differences between A.IV Evolution and Evolution Global, but the gameplay is similar enough that it just makes sense to play the version with text that I can actually read. Plus, Evolution Global adds a feature where you can take a virtual train ride through a 3D version of your city, which is kinda fun. Coming up is the Statue of Liberty, and just a couple blocks away is the Washington Monument. A.IV Evolution is the first PlayStation game from Artdink, a Japanese studio that was known mostly for its PC games up until this point. The company found its first major success in 1985 with the original A-Train, which was more of a straightforward railway construction game compared to the financial empire sim we're looking at today. In the mid-90s, Artdink made a name for itself by releasing a series of strange and unconventional games for the PlayStation, including the undersea exploration game Aquanaut's Holiday, narcoleptic caveman sim Tale of the Sun, and No One Can Stop Mr. Domino, which really speaks for itself. We actually covered Artdink's PS1 catalog in detail a while back during our Adventure Pals weekly stream, and you can watch the archives by clicking the annotations here. As some indication of its PC roots, A.IV Evolution was the first PS1 game to support the PlayStation mouse peripheral in Japan. Sony's mouse is only compatible with a handful of releases in North America, but it was more widely supported in Japan, where adventure games and dating sims were much more popular. A.IV Evolution was also the first PlayStation game to get a special edition release as part of a bundle that included a mouse. In the United States, A-Train was published by Maxis, an American studio that had a massive hit on PCs in 1989 with SimCity. A-Train was localized during a brief period of time in which Maxis was branching out as a publisher, localizing and distributing games from other studios like Elfish and SimTower. Before it localized the PlayStation version of A.IV Evolution Global, Maxis released a different A-Train game for DOS, Macintosh, and Amiga computers. This version was actually a localization of 1992's A-Train 3. It apparently didn't make much of an impact stateside, and Maxis shifted its focus back to internal development a few years after its release. A-Train is one of only 2 games Maxis released for the PlayStation, the other being a port of its 1993 PC game SimCity 2000. Looking at the footage here, you might notice a visual similarity between A-Train and SimCity 2000. Both games share a similar diametric viewpoint, and the way they represent cityscapes and multi-level terrain is largely the same. A-Train 3 was released before SimCity 2000, and given that Maxis was obviously aware of the series at that point, it was a likely inspiration for SimCity 2000's look and feel. For a console port of a PC game, A-Train plays surprisingly well on the PlayStation. Simulation games have been notoriously difficult to adapt to consoles, given that they're designed for higher resolution displays and feature gameplay that's better suited to a keyboard and mouse than a controller. A-Train consolidates its gameplay into an icon-driven menu system that works well with the PlayStation controller, and while it buries some functions behind a few too many sub-menus, it's overall a great conversion. A-Train also excels in terms of performance, which is something that can't be said of many console-ported simulation games at the time. Like, here, just look at how quickly everything moves in A-Train. And now look at the PlayStation version of SimCity 2000, which in comparison is clunky, imprecise, and slow. Even at its fastest speed settings, SimCity 2000 feels like it's just struggling along, while A-Train keeps up a brisk pace throughout with minimal lag. That's not to say that A-Train is in any way intuitive or easy to learn, though. The game offers very little in terms of instruction or tutorials, and basically just plops you in the middle of a city with no clues to what you should be doing. It took me several attempts at building a city in A-Train before I finally understood how I was expected to turn a profit, And to get to that point, you're going to need a lot of patience and a willingness to learn through failure. The object of A-Train is to build a commercial empire, starting by establishing a railway. Once you've got your trains up and running, you can transport passengers and freight, earning you income and giving you more options for expansion. From there, you can buy up land near your stations and build housing and commercial property, which attracts tenants and customers. And then, once you've earned enough cash from your transportation network and your subsidiaries, you can dive into a fully featured stock market simulation as you try to turn your millions into billions. In a first for the series, A.IV Evolution adds buses to the mix. Yeah, you can finally live out your dreams of running your own bus line. To do that, you need to build roads, place bus stops, and decide which types of buses suit your town. You also have to dictate schedules, balance fares. You even have to specify how each bus should turn at each and every intersection you've created, or else it'll just get lost along its route. Oh, and buses don't pass one another on the roads, so if you're managing more than one, you need to make sure they don't collide while they're doing their daily rounds. Let me remind you here that this is all just a small part of the game, and almost everything else you do in A-Train requires a similar level of micromanagement. Again, patience. You're gonna need it. It may not be the most approachable game in the world, but this degree of complexity earned the A-Train series a dedicated fan base, and Artdink released many more sequels over the last couple of decades. As of this recording, the most recent series entry for PCs is A-Train 9, which is available in English on Steam. There's even a version for the Nintendo 3DS, which was localized and released digitally in North America and Europe in 2015. I'll admit it, at first I was ready to write this game off as being totally impenetrable to anyone trying to play it nowadays. I spent hours trying and failing to turn a profit, and no matter what I did, it just felt like I was throwing my money away until I went bankrupt. But the game finally clicked with me as I started recording the footage you see here, and now I think I get the appeal. It's satisfying in an understated way to watch your city grow from nothing, and intersecting roads and railways presents a challenge that's both interesting and unique to A-Train, given that your transportation network directly affects the cash that flows in from your commercial property. In the end, I only built across a small portion of the map, but I had more fun than I was expecting. A-Train may be intimidating for newcomers, but it shows that some smart interface tweaks can make all the difference when porting a simulation game to consoles, and it demonstrated that the PlayStation was more than up to the challenge. Next time we're covering Neketsu Oyako, a side-scrolling beat-em-up from Technosoft. How does it stack up compared to classics of the genre like Final Fight? Well, it stars an angry muscle dad with a mustache, so that's a good start. We'll put ol' hot-blooded dad here up against Mayor Mike Hager in a fight to the death in our next episode. We'll see you then.